Welcome to the place where we learn about improv, 'cause public speaking can take you so far. Improvly speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking. Improvly speaking, say yes and flex your creative thinking.
Hello and welcome to the Improvly Speaking podcast. I'm your host, Dayna Gowan. Thank you so much for joining today. I am so excited about today's episode and today's guest. I'm just like shaking in excitement. And a little reminder, housekeeping here on this podcast. I like to focus on improv, public speaking, communication, performance, and creativity, and everything else in between. I also like to chat with experienced improvisers, newbie improvisers, and people who use improvisation in their daily lives, but don't think of it as improv. And our guest today is an experienced speaker, improviser, and clown. And I can't wait to talk all about clown presence and how that affects your stage presence. So without further ado, let me tell you about our amazing guest today, Don Colliver. Don currently lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. He has both a professional side and performer side, and he has found a way to merge the two with his public speaking and technical presentation training workshops. His popular public speaking courses have been delivered internally at Google and around the world, and they have transformed hundreds of nervous speakers into more effective and joyful communicators. I wish I had these workshops 8 years ago. That would be so cool to see, but I'll be honest, I don't know if I would have done them then. So anyway, love the work that he's doing. Don also provides trade show booth presentations and workshop services for companies looking to maximize their trade show return on investment. And he does what self-proclaimed CAAS, or Charisma as a Service. Don has performed with the Blue Man Group, toured internationally as a theatrical clown for contemporary Circus Spiegelworld, and is listed in the Cirque du Soleil Performer Database. For our improviser friends listening, Don has also trained at Upright Citizens Brigade, or UCB, Improv Olympic, or IO, and Second City. Don graduated from Boston University and holds certifications in design thinking, applied improvisation, and instructional design. He is the author of Wink, Transforming Public Speaking with Clown Presence. Please welcome the super talented, very well-rounded, and very charismatic Don Colliver. Welcome, Don.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Dayna. What an introduction. I don't know if I live up to that guy, but I'll do my best.
I know you will. I feel like I got a little Toastmasters-y there. Toastmasters are all about their introductions, right? And I think I did a good job with that introduction there. I made the Toastmasters proud. What do you think?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You checked all the boxes without a doubt. Great work.
Well, and Don, I saw that you're going to be speaking at the Toastmasters International Convention in August this coming year. And I want to tell our listeners what your title of your presentation is called. So it's called No Joke, Engaging Your Audience Like a Clown, Not the Creepy Kind. And it's all about how the principles of clowning can help improve our presentations, which I think is an amazing topic. And I'm so glad Toastmasters is leaning into that. That's cool.
Yeah, that was awesome. I had initially reached out doing Toastmasters for some time, and I had reached out to them initially to get on their podcast to get interviewed.
Oh,
and
okay.
They responded, they're like, we normally don't put guests on our podcast unless they've written for our magazine. So I'm like, well, I'll write for your magazine. And so I wrote an article about how to engage like a clown, and they liked it. And then they invited me back to write another article. And then they put me on the podcast, and then they invited me to speak at the International Convention in the Bahamas. So, I'm pretty excited.
It's a pretty awesome place to have a convention. The Bahamas, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've never been. We'll see.
Well, and I'm in Toastmasters still. I've been in it for, I lose track now, but probably 8 to 9 years. And I started out as a nervous speaker. That's why I joined. I was terrified of public speaking. How long have you been in it, and why did you join originally?
I joined, I think it would have been in 2015 or
Okay,
something, and I'm
nice.
not currently a member. I let my memberships lapse at the end of pandemic, but I joined because I was like, as you mentioned, I was doing conference presentations at big technology trade shows, like cybersecurity trade shows and things. And I would go there and I would speak all day long. I would deliver a 10 to 15-minute speech over and over again to audiences of like 15 to 20 people. But those conferences would only happen like once every 2 months or so. So I would get, my voice would get out of practice, and I wanted more chances to just stay ready. And
Mm-hmm.
Toastmasters is great because it gives you a chance, pretty much depending upon the club, every single meeting to get up and speak. And so it just let me stay ready.
Yeah, I noticed that too. Sometimes I haven't been going to the meetings regularly. It's been busy, just doing the podcast and doing presentations, but it is a great place to practice your material too. But I notice if I don't go and I haven't been speaking regularly, I get nervous, heart pounding kind of nerves that I haven't felt in a while. And once I get on stage, like I can harness it more, but it's more like, oh, what's this? Like, I haven't felt this in a while.
Right. Yeah. I think low stakes regular practice solves all the problems as far as I'm concerned. People are like, I use too many filler words. Oh, my gestures are weird. It's usually just like, well, if you can find a place to just talk every week, it'll probably go away on its own, all that stuff.
Yeah, and I saw you mentioned that Toastmasters as a big resource in your book, your Wink book, because it is a great place to practice and make mistakes and fail and learn how to embrace those mistakes and turn it into greatness when you are on the quote unquote bigger stage.
It's funny, like, it feels like such a throwback organization from the 50s or
A
something because
little
it's
bit.
cheap. It's super
Yes.
cheap. It's like the library. It's like when I go to the library, I take out books. I'm like, how is this still a thing? Like, this is amazing.
It's
For
an
free, I can
amazing
just take these
resource.
books out. Yeah,
I feel that too. Yeah. But you meet the coolest people. And one thing I love about Toastmasters is that people feel so comfortable to share almost immediately. Like it creates these environments where people feel safe. And I've heard some people's like most, I'll say traumatic, but just like their stories of their lifetime where they would not tell these stories in regular conversation, meeting them one on one. They would never tell these stories, but in a safe setting like Toastmasters, they feel comfortable to share, and it's the coolest thing.
totally. What club? Where do you go?
I am a member of Santa Monica Club 21, which is actually the 21st club to charter in Toastmasters history. So that's our big thing. We
Wow,
like to tout that. So the club actually chartered in like 1934. So it's 87 plus years old. And we celebrate every
wow,
September. It's kind of cool. So that's
awesome.
kind of the pride of the club, is like, we keep it going 80 plus years. So, and I saw that you won the 2017 District 1 Tall Tales contest. What was
Yeah.
your tall tale story about?
It was about Matt, the IT guy, which I made up a story of a giant guy who worked in IT in North Hollywood and how he saved the world from the apocalypse when he
Nice.
was going down the 405. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was extremely LA focused because I knew with, as your Toastmasters listeners will know, in Tall Tales, the furthest you can go is the district. You can't go any further than that.
Yep.
Uh, and so I was like, well, there's no reason that I need to make this internationally applicable story, I can keep it very LA focused. So I just made it super LA focused, and it killed. Like it worked really well.
Oh, I love it. They actually had Tall Tales contest this year, but it was weird because it was on Zoom for some of it, and then the
Mm.
district version was in person, and it just felt weird over Zoom to do like a very physical. My speech was very physical, and it felt weird over Zoom. But I
What
actually
was
have
yours
a funny.
about?
It was about. I have a big scar on my knee. I tore my ACL 8 years ago, 2016, and the doctor just like cut it open. It's not just like a little
Oh,
tiny button scar, like it is just a huge line down the side of my leg. And a friend of mine and always joked that it was my shark bite anniversary or shark bite scar. Well, I flipped it and I turned it into I got bit by gators, or like I fell into a swamp. I'm from New Orleans, so I fell into a swamp and a gator ended up biting me, and I highlighted my scar and everything to make it stand out. So I had a lot of fun with it, but I have a funny story to share with you. I actually competed in the, what was it? The area contest of Tall Tales. And I was the only one competing, usually area. Sometimes they don't get a lot of clubs. I was the only one competing, and I went overtime.
oh no!
And I was the only one competing. So I could have literally stopped at any point when I saw the green light and been like, okay, done. I'm moving on. But I felt that I just needed to like finish the speech. I really wanted to tell the story, and 3 to 5 minutes just didn't feel long enough. So I DQ'd myself.
Ah, well, you probably did your audience a favor. They weren't going to let you leave until you told the end of the story. It was probably super compelling.
Yeah, yeah. And I was glad I got to tell it. And again, it was on Zoom, so it felt weird. I think time flies faster on Zoom than in person. So anyway,
Hmm.
that was my funny story. It made me laugh after. I felt no regrets. I got to tell my story, and I had fun doing it.
That's great.
Well, so you shared with us your Toastmasters journey. Now, I want to know a little bit about your improv and clown journey. So, what came first, improv or clown?
Yeah, good question. Improv came first. I was this would have been in the like mid 2000s. I went through a divorce, and I had never done any kind of theater or anything before. And I was pretty bummed. And
Okay.
I'm like, I got to do something just for me that has zero, like, that doesn't benefit my job at all. Like just something purely for fun. And so I started taking an improv class. I was in Portland, Oregon at the time, and I took an improv class at Theater Sports up there.
Oh, nice.
And it was one of those things, probably same with you. It's like the first day I was like, where's this been all my life? I love this.
Yep.
And I kind of hooked in, and I started performing with them, Theater Sports. And I had moved there from LA, and I loved it so much. I ended up wanting to move back to go through the Upright Citizens Brigade curriculum. And so that's what I did. And then continued on from there. And I ended up at IO West when IO West was around as
Right.
a main stage sketch performer there. And I took a physical comedy class once, and the instructor, when he would be demoing things, if we would laugh, he'd like look at the crowd, and it would be he'd be leaving the scene, but he'd be looking at us, and somehow it worked. I was like, what? And then after I was like, what is that? And he said, that's clown stuff. And so he recommended me to another class, and then I started doing clown, and then that's kind of how I clicked into clown work.
Wow. Okay. Just, yeah, reading your background and knowing your experience, I would have thought maybe clown had come first. That's interesting that improv was first. And I got to share with you, I recently took a clown workshop at UCB. It was a weekend workshop. So 4 hours on Saturday, 4 hours on Sunday. So real short. Like my clown experience is very small, but I really enjoyed it. Like it was pretty wild compared to the improv classes that I've been in now for 3 years. It kind of blew my mind. I'm not going to lie.
Mm.
it really helped me to tap into my physicality more. One of the exercises, I didn't get to do this. It was a large class of like 16 people, but one of the exercises that a group got to do was called the washing machine, where they would demo a washing machine, but they couldn't really talk. They started talking, and the instructor, Zach Zucker, was like, "No, you all are talking too much. I want to see more physicality." So they became the washing machine. Like they'd be like, spin cycle, and like make the noises and the physical moves. And just watching that, I was like, "This is so cool."
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah, and it makes me want to do more. So I'm keeping it on my radar because I tend to be like I hate talking head presentations in like the speech world, the presentation world, but in improv I tend to be a talking head, I'm not going to lie. And so I
Hmm.
think clown can really take my improv to the next level, I think.
I agree. Yeah, yeah. It sounds like and that sounds like that workshop was really good for that sort of thing, adding in physicality to your improv.
Yeah, another exercise he had us do was, and I think you mentioned this maybe in your book, or maybe I've heard you speak about this, but where you kind of stand on the back wall, and then if the audience kind of laughs or engages with you, you take like a micro step forward. You referenced this somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a lot of ways into the way I see the beginning of clown presence, but eventually you're starting to learn what it is the audience finds funny about you. And I don't mean when you try to be funny. And so a lot of
Right.
times the thing that the audience finds funny about you might be something you're ashamed of oftentimes. And that's why clown training it requires a little bit of courage and bravery, and it's a very you need to be very careful as a clown instructor because you're playing with sensitive stuff. But once you know what is funniest about you and you can kind of own it, it's very, very powerful because you can learn to leverage it in your presentations. And that's kind of what that exercise starts to get at, because you start to see, oh, if I try too hard, the audience doesn't like it. But if I just relax in this way, they do like it. Or if I try too hard and then feel the failure, they like that. They like when I accept that I failed. So it's interesting to start playing with that stuff.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that as a speaker, you're kind of taught to like come up to the front and like stand front and center in front of the audience. And it's like, well, did you earn that? Like in the clown instructor would be like, did you earn coming up to the front? Like you've got to earn it, the audience's trust and stuff. And I'm not saying to do that as a speaker, but it was an interesting way to get closer to the audience of like gradually getting there instead of just being like, I know that I can be here kind of thing. I don't know. I
Well, I
like
think
that.
it builds a connection, and yeah, there
Yes.
isn't really a
Yes.
crossover in terms of the stepping forward and stepping back when it comes to public speaking. But what you learn is in that you are really listening carefully to what the audience is doing. You
Yes.
have to know if you can step forward or back. And I think if you step on stage to present in a public speaking context, people aren't used to a speaker being that attuned to what the audience is doing, and they love it. It feels like a game. It feels like a completely different presentation if somebody just before you was presenting in a normal way where they're just like blah 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 blah, like watching a YouTube video. If someone steps out and is really present and being affected by the tenor of the audience, that's incredibly compelling.
Well, and why do you think speakers don't lean into this more? Maybe the clown name or word gets people a little scared, right? But is it the nerves of it that we're so focused on rehearsing and preparing, and we bring this like version of prepared speaker to the audience and we're not allowing ourselves to connect? Is that what it is?
Well, I believe that the most effective style of public speaking is changing. I think at one time it was like perfect oratory. It was like rhetoric
Mm.
of like perfect
Mm-hmm.
turns of phrase, kind of similar to a State of the Union address, where every word has been wordsmithed and every pause has been wordsmithed. Now, if I go into a business meeting or a team update or something and somebody speaks like that, I'm going to be like, what is going on with this person? What are they trying to manipulate me to do? Why are they speaking like this? I think the most effective for most of our presentations, the most effective style is more authentic. Rather than say clown, I usually say authenticity, because I think if you prepare to the best of your ability, you show up, if you have some kind of a blunder, if you acknowledge it, take responsibility and move on, that can actually engage the audience more and get them more on your side. There was actually a study done about this, and I mentioned it in my presentation, this Toastmasters presentation. This social psychologist by the name of Elliot Aronson came up with something called the pratfall effect. He had two groups
Oh.
of competent speakers speak. One, they both were great speakers and well prepared. One group was flawless. One group spilled their coffee. Then the audience rated them on likability following the presentation. And of course, the ones who spilled their coffee were rated as more likable. But I always give a but for Toastmasters. There was a second part of the study, incompetent speakers, those people who weren't representative of someone who had prepared. Same grouping. One spilled their coffee, one didn't. The incompetent speakers that spilled their coffee were rated as least likable of all. So the takeaway is prepare as best you can. But then if you show up and things go wrong, just own it and keep going. And your audience it may endear you to your audience even more.
I love that. Yeah. And yeah, so basically you're saying we're not saying to go crazy and not prepare at all and just like trust that everything's going to be okay. You still have to put in the work to prepare, but you don't have to memorize every single word. Feel comfortable with your material, but don't know it word for word where it's if something messes you up, then you're like completely lost your train of thought and you can't remember where you were.
Big time. Yes, agreed.
Okay, so going back to your journey there, you did improv, you did clown. So then how did you start to weave public speaking into this clown experience and presence?
Well, I was teaching. I'm in Silicon Valley. I teach at Google, and I had developed a public speaking curriculum, a 6-week public speaking curriculum for them. And I just wrote it fresh. And I realized the stuff I was teaching was not your typical Toastmasters public speaking. It was also not improv. It had clown elements to it. I never mentioned the word clown ever in it, by the way.
Okay,
But
okay.
there's very much about just like the exercise you mentioned of like being present, being affected by your audience, and how that contributes to charisma and warmth. And that can be scary and also kind of transformational to people who have been focused on perfection. And you have to be, as an engineer or a coder, you have to be perfect.
Right. Right.
So it's very counterintuitive a lot of times. But anyway, so I was delivering this course and I started realizing, wow, this stuff just isn't out there. No one's written about this. So I pulled it into the book, Wink, Transforming Public Speaking with Clown Presence. And yeah, that's how it started.
Okay, so you hid the term clown for a while, but it seems like, I mean, your book has clown presence in the name. So you're kind of leaning into the clown term now, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can't completely obfuscate it. I mean, it's
Right.
the whole thing. Yeah. But it is a big hurdle I need to surmount. Generally, anytime I'm speaking to people, I have to be like, look, I get it. Clowns are creepy. Okay. I'm not talking about Pennywise the clown. I'm talking about clown presence. It's a way of showing up, which is fine. I think it gives me an in to speak about this stuff. I mean, that's one of the first things I say in my Toastmasters keynote. I address the Pennywise in the room, I guess you could say.
Well, I feel that too with improv. Everyone thinks of improv as whose line is it anyway? And there's definitely a fear around improv and being put on the spot. And then they've seen whose line is it anyway? And they're like, well, those people, Wayne Brady, Colin Mockery, they're so good. Like, I'll never do that. And it's like, you don't have to. you don't, you have to just use the skills of it. And that's how you can apply it to your workplace and your personal life. And I feel like that's a big challenge, and a lot of people will hide the improv term.
Yeah.
Clearly, I'm leaning into it with my business name, Improvly Speaking. So there's no hiding it there. But I do feel like improv is maybe more accepted than clown in our society. So you do have an insurmountable, well, no, I'll say surmountable challenge ahead of you.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've heard all kinds of weird coded people calling it play and all this. But I think when you're dealing with a company or a HR person, I understand they want to see a binary change of like KPIs that have changed from the beginning of a training to the end. And if you go in all touchy feely, we're going to make everybody feel great. Is that really impacting the bottom line? So I understand where that's coming from. That's why I worked really hard to find research and find KPIs I can move, key performance indicators, to actually benefit the bottom line with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. And, I was just thinking of another exercise we did in that 8-hour weekend class. So it was my very small clown experience. But another exercise we did, I think you mentioned this in your book, but I think you called it Save the Show. But
Mm-hmm.
we did it, I think the instructor did a little differently where someone got on stage and then as soon as someone in the audience was bored, they raised their hand. And that meant you had to change it up and do something new. And again, I did not participate in this exercise. There were 16 people in the class, so we didn't all get to do everything. But watching people and how they changed it up, that was huge to see.
Yeah, I bet. That's an interesting way to structure that. Yeah, that's a rough exercise for folks because you
But
kind of go through your bag of tricks very quickly and then you're like, "Oh no, now what do I do?"
yeah, and I think you mentioned that in your book, like that was one of your first clown, or that's when you realized, like, I need to be authentic, or when you were authentic, right? That's when the audience actually laughed or engaged with you.
Yeah, just acknowledging what was going on. Like I'm failing up here and then sharing that with the audience was very, very powerful. Like it was more powerful than anything I could have pre-written.
Which is always my problem too, because we all have our bag of tricks, right? We kind of know what we think works, or we want to be funny, so we try too hard to be funny, and the funny is actually in the moment of failing, the moment of recognizing that you're failing.
Mhm. As far as improv, learning to trust impulses too is very counterintuitive for highly perfectionist type people because nothing comes out of some folks' mouth unless it's gone through like 7 filters. And getting in a safe space where you're supported and you feel comfortable just blurting things out for a while. Uh, I was often surprised, like, oh my gosh, that impulsive statement I made was better than anything I could have come up with. Like just trusting my impulses actually that unconscious has a lot of great things to say.
Yeah, I don't let that unconscious come to the surface much.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about trusting it though. And yeah, just being in the moment. That's really powerful. I mean, do you find in your workshops like kind of light bulbs are going off for people?
Yeah, sure. Sometimes. I mean, I'm pretty focused on business public speaking. And so we're not getting deeply into that impulse stuff.
Right,
Um,
right.
I was teaching clown at Berkeley Rep up here in Berkeley, but I'm not teaching clown right now. Like I said, it's a heavy responsibility to be a clown teacher, and
Yes.
I got to hand it to people who do it. And perhaps I will re-enter the fray at some point. But yeah, I mean, you're encouraging people to fail and show it on
Yeah.
stage. And every culture has a different experience of that. And I'm pretty privileged as a white guy. And so it's really hard for me to tell other people to do that who maybe don't have my background, you know? So I'm just kind of watching and listening right now.
No, I love it. I'm eating up this conversation because like you said, it's a bit newer compared to the polished speaker, which was my goal doing Toastmasters. And I kind of got there. Like I would get the note a lot that I was very polished. And I feel like I've regressed maybe in that trend. I don't feel super polished anymore, but I think I connect better. And so I might make more mistakes. I might say ums and ahs. I actually have a few filler words. That's okay because my
Mm-hmm.
message is good and like I'm more keyed into the audience. I could certainly improve, but I think that has shifted. Like being polished is not my goal anymore. Connecting with the audience is.
Yeah, if you see somebody engage with an audience, like a person really working a workshop, thinking about filler words or gestures is the last thing on, because they're like moving around. Oh, you said something. They're moving, and it feels like it's changed from a presentation to a dialogue, but 1 to like 30. It's amazing when you see someone really great at that.
Yes, and that's what I want to strive to be. Like I want to be there. I want to be in like the flow zone, like not even worried that I said something weird and like my brain's not even thinking about that. So that's my goal. I guess the flow zone.
Well, there's a clown term called le jeu,
Ah.
Lejeu,
I didn't know how to say it.
and
I saw that in your book. Yeah.
yeah, it's French for the game. And there's different ways to look at it. Some clown people will disagree with me on this, but the way I see it is, it's when it comes to public speaking, is when you're speaking, really seeing any interaction or any dialogue, even non-verbally, with the audience as a joy and a pleasure, and like seeking it out, being willing to forego your content for a second if you can acknowledge somebody who's like raised their hand or is nodding, like, thanks, Dayna, it looks like you get what I'm talking about. And like having joy in that, even in serious conversations or serious presentations, I think you can hold your content in one hand and that joy of connection in the other, and you can hold both at the same time. So I think that's where the transfer of this clown presence, how it moves into public speaking.
Yes. I love that. And I want to just switch gears real quick. I want to ask you a little bit about your performance days. So, I mean, you're definitely a great speaker, improviser, clown. And I'm actually surprised that you didn't have a theater background. Just based on your bio, I was like, for sure, he has a theater background. So I'm very surprised by that. But I mean, you've performed with Spiegel World. I mean, you've done clowning in many shows and stuff. What's the experience like on stage that you like have gotten as a performer? Like, have you felt that performance high?
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff happened to me as a grown up. So I had already been a television producer in LA for 15 years. And so I'd already kind of had a career, and I wasn't the young kid getting out with my MFA, going on auditions and please hire me.
Right.
So I kind of didn't give a crap. I kind of was just doing this stuff for fun. And if it happened, great. And so I got the Spiegel World job. I got passed through the auditions for Blue Man. They sent me to New York. And I was just like, I can't believe this is happening, but I'm just going to go take it as long as I can. And I'm like a 45-year-old man with all these like 23-year-olds, running around. And I'm like, I can't believe this happened, but I'm going to do it. And so with the Spiegel World Tour, it was like this multi-city North American international tour. And I was the host clown for like hundreds of people every night. And
Wow.
I just, I couldn't, I'm sure it's like a lot of people. I was like, someone's going to figure out what a joke this is eventually, but somehow it kept on going. And I think primarily it was that I was kind of fearless,
Okay.
and because I came to it later and I kind of had nothing to lose, and there's nothing more dangerous than someone who has nothing to lose. And so, yeah, I think, and so uh, the performance, it was a huge high. It was awesome. Yeah, getting laughs, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, and so you were fearless. Does fearless mean you weren't nervous at all, or did you still feel the nerves before getting on stage? How did you handle your nerves being in front of that big of an audience?
Oh, huge nerves, terrified. Yeah. But I think when it's something I know that it's the right thing to do, there's like nerves before that. And then there's nerves when like, this is not a good idea. And it was always like, this is the right thing to do. Yeah. I have a meditation practice, deep breathing. I love, meditation apps, doing a body scan, led voice body scan on the Calm app or something
Oh,
like
yeah,
that. It's
for
really
sure.
super helpful. But often for me, it's as much as I can to get into my body, because I can't, my brain can't relax me. I found that in LA, when I'd be doing shows, there's a lot of Korean spas in LA, and I would go to the Korean spa and do the hot cold cycle of like, get really, really hot in the sauna, then jump into the cold plunge, then go back, get really
Okay.
hot in the sauna. And that would 100% of the time relax me. And I would do that. I did a run in Hollywood Fringe in a show for Four Clowns. And I was the host. I was this like impresario guy. And again, like pushing the show forward in front of hundreds of people all night, like improvising of whatever happened. And I'll be so nervous, but I would go to the spa like right before the show, which seems like really crazy, but
Yeah.
it helped. And I was able to pivot and work on my impulses a little bit easier.
Wow. Okay. All right. So note to self: try a hot and cold spa. All right.
Yeah. And so you haven't been to any Korean spas down
I have
there?
not yet. No.
Well, heads up, it's separated co-ed and you got to be naked. So just so you know,
Okay.
like that's a thing you got to do. Yeah.
Yeah, that's an important safety note to know
Yes.
going into it. Yeah. All right. Well, I know I've been focusing a lot on the performance side, but I do want to get into your technical presentations, because in your presentations and trainings, you teach people how to add humor to their presentations and make even the most technical, jargony presentation worthwhile to listen to and actually engaging to listen to. So here's the $1,000,000 question: how do you do that?
Well, adding levity to a presentation is not that hard if you know where to look. Like I mentioned, some of these technical folks are so focused on their content, and they should be.
Yeah,
They've worked so hard. It's brilliant. These are the smartest people I've ever met in my
sure.
life. But I know certainly at these cybersecurity trade shows and things, simply referencing the familiar of, even like, did you see the line out there at the food court for Subway? Uh, that will get a laugh. It's not even really a joke. It's just acknowledging things we all share. It's called affiliative humor. And they did a study in 2006 that found affiliative humor, or finding humor in things we all share, is positively correlated with connection. So if you want to connect with your audience, mention some things you all have in common, or maybe a common frustration or something like that. That same study found that more aggressive kinds of humor, of maybe making a joke about an out group, like, oh, don't you hate when those people do that, or something like that, that was
Ah,
not positively correlated with connection. So it doesn't help you get more connected with your audience. So first of all, play with the familiar. And lastly, just learn to laugh at yourself. Kind of what we were talking about before. Like if something goes wrong, acknowledge it, take responsibility. Well, sorry, the computer went to sleep. Let me wake it up really fast. I like to give a framework, the ATM framework, acknowledge the blunder, take responsibility, and move on. Like
Ah,
if you keep on it, like your audience won't forget. But if you just move forward, if you take responsibility and move forward, nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like only you care. So just like let it go.
it's so
Uh,
true.
but from an improv perspective, kind of the ninja level is if you have a blunder, acknowledge, take responsibility, but then connect it later in your presentation. Like, hey, remember when I spilled my coffee? That's exactly what we're going to do with the sales this year or something like that. You can loop it in. They call that
Callbacks,
callback.
callback.
Yeah.
Callbacks and connections. Callbacks
Yeah.
can form connections. Ah, I love it. And I think those are going to have to happen in the moment. You can't have a setup. You can't try to frame it or put like a plant in the audience. Like it's got to happen naturally. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, fine. But if it does, you can trust your skills to lean into it and use it to your benefit.
Yeah, that's the challenging thing about clown work is because with a bit, you need to script
Right.
problems. You need to script problems and act around those problems you have to keep repeating it. And for example, I'll tell you and your listeners, in my Toastmasters presentation, my pants fall down 3 times in a 45-minute keynote. Okay. And
Okay.
so now I'm working on like, how do I fine tune these beats to get the laughs? Because I know my pants are going to fall down. Do I go, "Huh?" Do I underplay it? Do I look up? Like, what are the beats to maximize the laughs? So that's where like acting comes in when you have to repeat bits.
Okay, so that is a plant, but you're working on how to make it authentic and kind of and act it authentically. Interesting.
That's what I mean. There's improvisational clown work, and then there's building clown bits. And when you're building a
Uh-huh.
clown bit, generally there's multiple screw ups, and you have to act like it's the first time it's ever happened.
So that's like ninja clown level that we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, it's if you want to do bits, if you want to
Right.
eventually get paid, I guess.
Right. That's wow. That's like next level. I love that. I want to ask you about your trade show presentations that you do because listen, I've been to a few expos. I haven't done like the big trade shows and stuff, but I've walked around an expo floor. I've been a vendor at an expo floor. People don't want to come up to you. Like they're shy, they're hesitant. It's like pulling teeth trying to get people to come see what you're all about. So how do you engage people on an expo or trade show floor?
You give out a bunch of crap, I think.
That helps. That helps. But how do you, you create a buzz, right?
Yeah, generally, for the kind of trade shows I work, which are technology trade shows, we will have a booth theater. So maybe 15, 20 seats and a big screen. And it'll be my job on mic to gather a crowd and then deliver an 8 to 12 minute presentation every 15, 20, 30 minutes or something like that.
Interesting.
And usually there's some kind of swag they get if they come and sit down, but they won't sit down unless I harass them in a nice way to get in there. So I just try and be a personable guy. I use those things. I make it familiar. Hey, anybody walk here from their hotel? Man, it's so hot in Vegas. Am I right? Or anything like, oh, I love your jacket. I don't know. Anything to get people sitting down. And once they sit down, I deliver the thing. Sometimes people actually care. Sometimes people come, they're like, oh, we want to hear about your solution for sure. Yeah. And then you deliver the presentation, and usually there's some kind of giveaway at the end. That's generally the setup because marketing folks, they get it. Like nobody's just going to come because you have the best product. You got to add a little something else for the expo. Yeah.
You got to dangle a little something in front of them, little incentive for watching. But then if it's an engaging enough, which I'm sure your presentations are, they do actually learn something and you surprise them a bit.
For sure. Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing because I've seen companies that get the booth, get the swag, and then they don't really have anyone that's trained in public speaking. And wow, they struggle. They struggle
Mm-hmm.
because it's that clown thing again. Like you have to be willing to get a lot of no's, a lot of people ignoring you all
Yes.
day long. And it's just got to not bug you. You just got to keep at it or even find it amusing. So that's where the performance element and the failure element in particular comes in handy.
That's so helpful. Just being okay, getting a lot of no's, getting a lot of blank stares, eye rolls, you name it, ignores, hand to the face, ignore you. Yeah, you got to be okay with that. But you still can reach people. That's really cool. I want to ask, charisma as a service. How do you bring charisma as a service there? Because that's your term, right? You made that up.
I made that up. It's a funny story. Like the small SBDC, the small business, it's like a government agency and they give you free marketing consulting if you sign up for a mentor. So I signed up for this mentor and the guy was like, "Oh, you got to have videos and you have to have clever words." So I'm like, "Okay." And so I came up with a bunch of stuff and he's like, "This is gold." And one of them was charisma as a service, software as a service, or SaaS is kind of a buzzword in technology. SaaS is like Google Drive. It's a service. It's in the cloud. You don't buy the software. You're renting it, if you will. And so I'm like, I can be charisma as a service. I'm charismatic. You can hire me for a week and then I go away. And so that's charisma service.
I love you hire me for a week, I get all kinds of people interested, and then I go away. I do my job and I
Exactly.
go away.
I'm like a attraction assassin. I get in my car, I drive in, I get out, I do the thing, get back in my car, I drive away.
I, I mean, that's your next buzzword, I think. Attraction
Attraction
assassin.
assassin. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe,
That's
maybe not. I don't
even
know. Yeah.
scarier than the clown word.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
not. Hey, we workshopped it, we yes-anded it, and now it's like,
Yeah.
nah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, speaking of yes and, Don, I want to ask you, I mean, you're an improviser, a clown. How do you embody a yes and mindset in your life, in your work?
Great question. How do I embody a yes and mindset? These days, I mean, when I think of yes and, there's a lot of relying on what your partner does, which is really important because you're yesing something your partner has given you and you're adding to that. The theme of my Toastmasters speech is you are enough. So
Mm.
I think my work with clown has started to realize, oh, I don't have to be reliant on getting something to add to it. I already have enough. So I think that's kind of these days. And boy, I meditated on it every morning. I tell myself, you are enough, Don, because like that's a battle I have all the time. Like I got to do more or this, I don't think this is good enough. And it's such a struggle. Like perfectionism is such a struggle. And trusting that, you've heard the term human being versus a human doing, that I'm enough just if I did nothing. I'm still enough, which feels like such a foreign concept. But I think that's how I try to live yes and in my life.
Thank you. Needed to hear that today. I've been stressing and kind of buzzing around like with all the to-dos, and I don't think people can hear it enough that we are enough. I really think we could just hear it as many times. We need to hear it as many times as possible because it's a very important message to hear.
Yeah. I don't know if you did the exercise in Zach's class of there's a common exercise when you start clown is you just go and you stand silently in front of the audience for a minute and you just stand there and it's torturous. And then different teachers handle that in different ways, but you end up seeing like all the all the walls people put up and the way they kind of try to not be present and try to cover and try and like play it off or something. But when you see someone get up there and just like be present and be enough, it's great. It's so like attractive. It's like, oh, you're human, you're compelling just being there.
He did that exercise. I think he combined it with the one I was talking about where you can move like a micro step forward if the audience likes you. So it was one of those like, stand still and let the audience love you. That was his message. Let the audience love you. Let us figure out that we love you. And then you can start to like add to it. And you know what I did right away? I immediately started like tying my shoe. The LA marathon was going on that weekend. So I was like, I had a whole bit in mind. I'm going to like tying my shoe like I'm a runner. And he was like, psst, hey, you just need to stand there. Like, let the audience love you first before you do anything. And so I immediately tried to do too much. I didn't let them love me. So that fits too. Exactly.
It's the hardest thing.
What you're
Some people
saying.
start to cry. Some people aren't used to just standing there. They're so used to doing other stuff. It's like really powerful.
And the silence too is killer for some people too. If you're used to filling that silence and filling that void, ooh, yeah, it is tough to just be silent and make eye contact and look around with people.
Yeah. I'll tell you really fast. I did this workshop. I actually flew up to back to Portland for I won't mention the name, but it was a really renowned clown teacher. It was like a 2-day workshop, 2 full-day workshop.
Wow.
All we did was that exercise, but just everybody, there was probably 30 people. One at a time, you'd get up on stage, you'd look and connect with every single 30 people, and then you sit down. Everybody started to cry. That's all we did for 2 days. That's all we did was stand up there and cry. It was amazing.
It's so powerful. It's like therapeutic. Like you went to a yoga retreat. Like you got the benefits of a yoga retreat without going to do yoga and meditation.
I'll be honest, it got to be a little much halfway through the first day, but I'm sure it helped a lot of folks. Yeah.
You got your fill, you cried, and then, I get it.
I'm good. Yeah.
Well, you lived to speak about it. And Don, I've just really enjoyed having you on today, sharing these fun stories from the performance side of things and also the technical, professional side of things. It's really cool to see how you're merging the two, and it can really help people and businesses become more innovative and creative. We're so stuck in our like blocks and our cubicles and our mindsets. Like this kind of stuff is really powerful. So I want to ask you, please tell our listeners, your listeners, our listeners, where can they find out more about you?
Yeah, happy to connect on LinkedIn at Don Colliver. You can go to my website at winktechtalks.com if this kind of stuff interests you. And I think you might have checked it out. If people are interested in developing this skill, I have a free exercise you can download. If you go to doncolliver.com/tech engage, there's an exercise you can do to begin to hold these two things in your hands at one time, both your content as well as the engagement with your audience. I call it the hand raise engagement exercise. Give that a try too.
Yeah, that's a really cool exercise. I will definitely try that. That was interesting to see. Very cool. I do have your book. I purchased it. I have it on Kindle. And I'm a big highlighter. When I read things on Kindle, I tend to highlight a lot. And I think I have like 2 or 3 chapters into your book so far. Like probably 70% of it's highlighted. So I'm like, if 70% is highlighted, like what's important here? Well, all of it, apparently.
Wow. Thank you.
Yeah. Don, it's really cool to talk to an official clown, especially after my 8-hour clown workshop I've done.
That's a lot. You keep cool. Like kind of poo-pooing it. That's a lot of clown stuff, 8 hours.
I mean, it's more than I think the average person.
That's
sure.
For sure.
But
yeah.
But I say 8 hours because I want more, basically. Like I want to get into it more and I'm exploring it. So the next time we chat, whenever our paths cross again, I'll let you know how many more hours of clown I have. I'll keep a tab.
Keep stacking up those hours.
Yeah. Don, incredibly grateful for your expertise and experience. Thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. What a pleasure.
And thank you for listening to today's episode with Don Colliver. Oh my God, I kind of nerded out a little bit. I got really excited about the clown stuff. I know he called me out of like, you keep saying you've done 8 hours. Like, that's a lot. I really do want to get into it more. I think clown can really help me to find more physicality in my body and really engage better with the audience and notice what the audience wants and lean into that more. I think it'll give me more connection. And above all else, I think it would just help me to kind of let go and be willing to hear those no's and embrace those failure moments, like Don was saying. So stay tuned for that. I am going to check out more of the clowning world in LA and maybe change this podcast to clownly speaking. Just kidding. We won't be doing that anytime soon. But I do think clown could be a really cool and useful tool for my improv and for my speaking and just for life in general. I really appreciate Don coming on today and telling his background and sharing about the clown experience and the clown presence. And it's really interesting to see how he's merged it into the professional world. And I know he said for a while he wasn't really calling it clown. He was taking the tools and aspects of it, but was hiding the clown term and name. But, now he has the Wink book and he's just leaning into it. And I think that's even cooler. You're always going to get some people who are like, I hate clowns. I can't do anything that's called clown anything. Ugh, I had a clown at my birthday party when I was 5 years old and I can't face clowns. And I get it. I'm not poking fun. I totally empathize with your trauma. However, I will just say for anyone who's willing to embrace the failure moments and have those really tough moments on stage, maybe it might make you cry. Clown is kind of cool to check out. I will add, in the workshop that I took, the 8 hours of clown that I did, we also got to do a trip and fall or a pratfall kind of exercise. And I've never purposefully fallen on stage before. And it was kind of fun, actually. And it was fun to watch other people do it and how they handled it. Looking back, I kind of made it too much of a bit and I didn't really lean into just like feeling it. I had something pre-planned a bit. So when I get to try it again, I will just kind of fall and see what comes up. I don't know. So for anyone who's listening and going, I'm not going to take a clown workshop. Like, I'm just not going to do that. I get it. I hear you. I understand. However, if you're looking to level up your public speaking skills, I want to encourage you to find something that will help you do that. It doesn't have to be clown. It doesn't have to be improv either. Like, what's something that's going to help you level up your public speaking where you are more authentic and engaging and connecting with your audience? If polished is your goal, great. If being more connecting with your audience is your goal, great. But find something that will help you do it. So I want to encourage you to check out Don's workshops. They seem really great. I definitely want to check them out when I get a chance. Check out Toastmasters, which is a great low stakes environment to practice and train your skills more. And I will add, I do more improvised public speaking coaching. So I work on handling things that come up off the cuff and how can we be more open to that. So I use the tools and the skills and the exercises from improv to help us train that and be okay with that. I think a lot of times I hear from people, they say, well, I'm fine presenting off of a PowerPoint or whatever, but I hate the Q&A portion after because I can't plan for that and I don't know what they're going to ask. And I say, well, I like the Q&A portion because especially if they ask questions, that means they were listening and they're engaged. They want to know more. So I like the Q&A portion. And I want to get you, or I want to help you get to where you like it too. And it's even greater part of your presentation is the Q&A. Instead of dreading it, how can we get you to where you enjoy it? And there's a lot of cool improv exercises that can help with that and help you get out of your comfort zone a bit. And so I do one-on-one trainings for this, and I also can do it in a group setting as well. So I want to ask you to be truly honest and really reflect here and ask yourself, how authentic am I being when I speak on stage? And be very honest here. There's probably always room for improvement. Even the greatest speakers will say that they can improve and engage better and connect better. But where do you think you are on a scale of 1 to 10? Where are you in your authenticity scale? And I know authenticity is a big buzzword. If you don't like it, how about engaging, connecting scale? Like, how well are you connecting with your audience on a scale of 1 to 10? 1 being the least connecting and 10 being the most connecting, like you're almost sitting in their laps, not in a weird way, but just in a connecting way. I don't know how that would work, but like 10 is the ultimate connection level. Where are you on that scale? And if you answer at a number that you wish to improve on, let me know. You can reach out to me at Dayna at Improvly Speaking. That's Dayna at improvryspeaking.com. That's improv, speaking.com. Side note, I always love getting the captions on like videos and transcriptions and stuff because they always say improbably speaking, because improbly is not a word yet, although I've made it a word, but improbly is not a well-known word. So it's just funny to see what they come up with. You can also find me on Instagram at Improvly Speaking. On LinkedIn, I'm at Dayna Gowan. And I also have my website, improvryspeaking.com. So again, wherever you find your public speaking training is great. Just the fact that you're trying to level up your speaking skills and not just be a talking head in your presentations, that is the biggest win of all. I want to encourage you to please, if you are feeling more like a talking head, and if you feel like you're not engaging or connecting with your audience as much as you wish you could or know that you could, get some help, get some training, and become the speaker that you want to be. It can absolutely be trained through practice and training and trying new things and trial and error and trial and failure. But you have to put it out there. You can't just wish it in your head and hope that it comes true. So go for it. Reach those public speaking goals in the best way that you can. I'm here for you. If you need anything, thanks so much for listening to today's episode with Don Colliver. I had so much fun. I hope you did too. Thanks for listening and supporting Improvly Speaking. Talk to you next time.